better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch is brought to you by Nedbank.
Hours. It's the 12th of November. You're watching Eswatini TV. This is Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you for choosing us. My name is Sifiso Kumalo. Happy to co-host this program with Notsiles Tole. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good. Let's get to it. On the program today, we tackle a crucial conversation on fraud awareness. This is actually one topic that continues to affect individuals and businesses across the country. As technology advances and digital banking becomes more convenient, fraudsters are also becoming more sophisticated in their methods, of course, using tactics such as social engineering, account takeovers, and fraudulent proof of payments to deceive unsuspecting individuals. Now, fraud is a serious offense, one that actually undermines trust, damages reputations, and can lead to significant financial loss. Nedbank has taken a strong stance against fraud through its zero-tolerance policy and various prevention measures and continuous client education. In our chat with Nedbank today, we unpack the realities, risks, and responses around fraud in the days of modern banking.
And of course, we shift gears and we look at the World Bank that is in partnership with the Southern African Power Pool. They have approved a regional project that is worth over 200 million in Malangeni, and Eswatini is part of it. The initiative aims to expand regional power trade and unlock private sector investment across the energy grid. But we want to understand what this means for Eswatini's economy, still heavily reliant on imported electricity. Our economist, Sanele Sibia, is going to join us to unpack the economic prospects, the risks, as well as what this could mean for the country's path toward energy independence. And then later on the show, we shift our focus again to the future of digital payments in the continent. The Nenda Foundation that is set to launch the State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems report for the year 2025 this Thursday at the critical Central Bank of Eswatini, a flagship publication that tracks Africa's journey toward a more connected, a more inclusive and cashless economy. We're going to be joined by Dr. Robert Ochola, the Chief Executive of the Nenda Foundation. He's going to help us explore what this report reveals about innovation, about inclusion, as well as the digital transformation that is shaping Africa's financial system. 3 minutes after 2, you're watching Nedbank Business Watch.
Let's kick things off with some of our business stories.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Welcome back in our business news update this afternoon.
We start with the portfolio that looks at enabling business in the Kingdom of Eswatini. The Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade that has announced solutions to challenges that are faced by small and medium enterprises from a solution that comes with African Alliance proposing to assist small-scale businesses to collect money from non-paying suppliers at a minimal fee to a cell phone number that is created by the Ministry for businesses that have not been paid to report their grievances. The minister shared these shortly after the MSME conference that was held at Real Villas Eswatini.
Ama-outcomes ukuthi kwecala abosomabhizinisi bacela ukuthi uhulumende ababhadale. Bacela nokuthi inkampani letinkulu ukuthi babhadale. lokho ke kusho ukuthi sidawende ama policies kuhulumende lesitawafaka la ekhathi emthethweni we-Citizens Economic Act ngoba sesenda ama-regulations alama suggestions laphuma kule workshop ukuze ukuthi sale kuba ngumthetho lokuthi imali yama-SMEs uma ngabe balethe ama-services kuhulumende babhadaleke ngesikhathi kube bede i-situation where bangabhadaleki ngesikhathi. Kwesibili sithembisile esiveni ukuthi sidaba nenombolo lapho khona wonke umuntu longakabhadaleki ngesikhathi asitshele ukuthi wanika uhulumende i-service lethini ngiphi le ministry ngiphi le department ngiservice bani lalamnika noma ama-goods bani lawa supplier ukweletwa malini so ukweleta isikhathi esingakanani. Ngiyajabula ke kumemetela lamhla esiveni ukuthi le nombolo seyikhona and ngiyacela ukuthi sive siyisebenzise sidabe sesiyayithatha le information thina siya kulamatiko lafanele nelitiko la finance senda ukuthi ibe khona le solution ukuthi labo somabhizinisi babhadaleke and babhadaleke ngesikhathi. Le nombolo ke ithi 7602 8830 7602 8830 mawushaya le nombolo angeke akubhadalele lotabamba locinga utawuthatha le information yakho ngoba baka set collab bese ke bacala le process ukuthi through litiko la commerce leyo information simikise etiko la finance kutobonakala lokuthi labo somabhizinisi bayabhadaleka yini ngoba lokho lesikutholako ukuthi lama invoices abhajwa le matiko angamikiswa le ka finance ukuthi ayobhadalwa bathembela balaba wabhajisiwe le matiko ukuthi batawuthola abo 10% bese ngikhona bawambe sebaya mix embili sive sathi ukuthi oh i-invoice yami ayikabhadalwa ka finance ayikabhadalwa e-treasury kanzi invoice nzini ibhajwe le matiko ethu kukhona lofuna kudizelwa lokho ke kutakwenda ukuthi sathi ukuthi lama invoice ahlala isikhathi esingakanani ahlala enzaweni lefanele yini. Lokunye ke lokusijabulisile kube ne-private sector company lechamukile lapha i-African Alliance yachamuka nesombululo lesihle lesitasebenzisa kuyo lenzaba yekubhadalana yathi uma ngabe usupply ehulumende phinze wasupply inkampani lenkulu kepha sola ikubhadale bona batasithatha lesikwelete sakho bakubhadale bese kuba ngumsebenzi wabo ukuthi bahambele le mali yakho at a fee but batawuconfirma lokuthi vele le nkampani noma lo hulumende vele uyakukweleta yini uthi uyawubhadala nini bese ke kuba ne percentage lencane labatayithatha kule mali mase sekubhadelwe kuze ukuthi phela nabo bakhona kurana lama services lawa bawajabulele kakhulu lama solutions lawa labe bakhona kulomhlangano bacela vele ukuthi sishe ngathi singaphangisa ku embrace lokhu na African Alliance ngoba kuyinto lensha lotawukhanza ukuthi kubosomabhizinisi labancane for imali leti ngasito letinkulu kakhulu bayakhona ukuthi bababhadalela abosomabhizinisi bese ke bayithatha yonke le mali mangabe sengiyabekisa kuthiwa sebabonke baku 50 million sebatawumela ke bona ukuthi uhulumende utabe sobhadala bona lo 50 million but bona babe sebababhadele laba somabhizinisi bayakhona ke lokuthi basebente so ke ngijabulile kakhulu lokuthi bekungasiko nje ukuthi besitobuka inkinga but we were solution focused and then ke lokunye ke lokuvelile ukuthi kunabo somabhizinisi nyalo labanhlobo lolusha lesithi ngema tech startups bakhale ngekuthi ke kwanyalo onke lama solutions la khona idimakethe mase ba develop lama apps abo emabhange uma ngabe sebafuna imali kusete kahle le support le specific for that kind of MSME ngoba the solutions la khona endelwe ema SMEs leswatayele but it's a different set of requirements uma ngabe ufuna kwenta le kind of business lengibekisa ngayo lapho ke sithetheke as a homework ukuthi litiko alihambe liyobona lisebenzana litiko la ICT ukuthi senda njani ku developer ama solutions la tawusita labo somabhizinisi laba ku IT sector ukuthi nabo bakhona ekuqala emabhizinisi bakhona ekuthengelwa ama-products abo bavikeleke nabo mhlawumbe kuma-patents nema-intellectual property aloko la bakuqalile nelive mangabe kukhona lelingakusebenzisa lokudevelopha lomusha liqale ngekusebenzisa kona lingakayi kuyokufuna ngaphandle kwegcina lengingacela ukugcina ngako ukuthi bathi bayambona uhulumende unema-factory shells lawa etinkapani letinkulu khanze ukuthi i-factory shell ibo 7,000 6,000 square meters 10,000 square meters kuye etulu but uma ngabe ngusomabhizinisi nje udinga i-factory shell encane lengu-1,000 2,000 noma 3,000 baye bakhanze ukuthi uhulumende ude iprogram lenjalo baceleke ukuthi uhulumende makenta le factory shell program yakhe ayibhalansise ukuthi senda ama-factory shells alabo somaguzumbela bemabhizinisi phinde sende ama-factory shells at subsidized rates of rental for the MSME sector and ngingathembisa ukuthi lokho ngilokunye lesitakusebenta.
FinCorp Group Managing Director Dimsani Msibi has emphasized the need to establish a dedicated committee to drive and support the growth of small and medium enterprises across the country. This was during the MSME conference.
I am hoping that as we conclude today and take resolutions, high up on the agenda, it will be how do we entrench the entrepreneurial culture among citizens? What are we saying about the school curriculum, university curriculum? We had guests from Uganda. They shared with us that at universities, they have business hubs and incubators. So students are graduating in their respective professions. There's an opportunity to explore business right at the university. The question becomes, why are we not there? I'm also hoping then we'll be able to reflect in terms of the ecosystem in the country. Do we have the right agencies to support SMEs when they are then prepared, trained, and ready to go into business? I'm also hoping we will reflect on what exactly promotes entrepreneurship in a country, what brings success to small businesses. And world over, they will tell you that clusters are the direction to take. And we do have examples of selected clusters in the country, but we need to roll out that more to other sectors. Then we begin to see where we're going in terms of direction. Finally, this can only happen if there is a dedicated steering committee. So we need to put together experts, players in the industry to then take this process forward, but they must account. There must be milestones. There must be reviews on a periodical basis to see how far are we and to what extent are we moving towards the target of making the SME sector in the country a vibrant one, main contributor to the economy, and main provision of employment. So back to SMEs, when all this has been done, and assistance has been offered by financial institutions, the most important thing is to honor our obligations. When we are challenged, is to be bold and approach the institution to say, let's engage and restructure and move forward.
And you're up to date with some of the latest in business this afternoon.
All right, stay with us. After the break, we connect with Dr. Ochola. We speak inclusive instant payment systems after the break. All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. The African Nenda Foundation will be launching the State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems 2025 report. It's an event that will be happening this Thursday at the Central Bank of Eswatini complex in Eswatini. It's a prestigious annual publication and it provides insightful analysis on the progress, the innovations, as well as the challenges that are shaping instant payment systems across Africa. As we build up to the official launch, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Robert Ochola, the Chief Executive of the African Nenda Foundation. He's going to share more about this significant milestone and what it means for the future of digital payments on the continent. Doctor, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. Firstly, congratulations on the upcoming launch. For context, if you can help us just by giving us the foundation, what is the SIIPS project and why is it a significant publication for Africa's digital economy?
Thank you very much for having me, and let me also start by thanking our host, the Central Bank of Eswatini. We're enjoying ourselves in this beautiful kingdom, and we're very happy to be here. So the state of instant and inclusive payment systems is basically a child of necessity. And why do I say that? I say that because when we started African Nenda Foundation 4 years ago, there was very little information around what the state of payments infrastructure was across the continent. As you know, there's 450 million Africans today who are financially excluded. And our theory of change says that if you build interoperable, low-cost, inclusive payment systems, then you can create the infrastructure that would allow for citizens across the continent to actually onboard and become digitally connected. So this is really why this report, as you mentioned, is a milestone and does begin to close the gap in data.
Yeah, and how would you say Africa has evolved since the last SIPS report? And where does Eswatini fit in that picture?
And indeed, I can only give you a few snippets of that today because, of course, the official launch is tomorrow. But if we look at last year, we had 28 instant payment systems in countries out of 54. And then we had 3 regional arrangements, regional switches across the continent. That number has now moved to 33. So we're proud to see, 5 more instant payments being built across the continent. So it shows that there is a movement in the right direction. I think the second thing, which is very important, is the fact that African Nenda also has 4 buckets to define how inclusive a payment system is. We have a bucket which is unclassified, where we don't rate you because you either don't have data or you only have one use case. We have a basic bucket where you probably do 2 use cases, person to person, person to business. Then we have a more advanced bucket, which we call progressed. So here you're seeing a more inclusive governance. What I mean by that? I mean that you now have fintechs, banks, mobile network operators who can directly log into or connect to the switch. And therefore, that is a more progressed. And then finally, you have a mature bracket. And last year, we did not have any African system that was sitting in a mature bracket. And this year, what we've seen is one of the countries on the continent has moved into that bucket. And what is important about that bucket, over and above what I mentioned on progressed, is now you begin to give power back to the consumer. So there's a recourse mechanism. A lot of our citizens, as a final point, would send money and they wouldn't have a recourse mechanism in which they could go back to the bank or the PSP to then say, listen, this money was sent and I have no recourse. So this is what's quite exciting about the movement that we're seeing.
It's a loaded answer. It's a loaded answer. And if you say these are just snippets, one then is only excited to see the final report when it gets launched tomorrow. Inclusivity, that is a recurring theme in African Nenda's work, right? What barriers would you say still exist in achieving true inclusion in the SIPS financial system or ecosystem, as it were?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good question. Couple of barriers, and I'll just mention 3. I think today we talk about the Africa we want, Agenda 2063, the AFCFTA. So to achieve that, we need to have a common regulatory environment that defines how payments are regulated from a country, a REC, and then of course at a continental level. This is a fundamental gap that still exists. The second thing is indeed the speed at which we're seeing countries roll out payment systems. Some of these systems used to take almost 5 to 6 years. We want to reduce that barrier significantly. And then thirdly is really digital literacy, and consumer knowledge. So the consumer feels empowered and they understand indeed some of the risks, but know how to mitigate those risks. So the issue of digital literacy and financial literacy continues to plague our continent.
Yeah. You speak of the AFCFTA, and we are looking at numbers around 1.3 billion people and an estimated $3 trillion in terms of the GDP. One wants to ask if you could share examples of how, the instant payments are transforming small businesses as well as informal traders across the continent.
Thank you very much for that question. So two numbers shout out. The first one is the $5 billion that we lose on an annual basis because of expensive correspondent relationships. So money moving from Eswatini to Nairobi or Eswatini to Zambia because of issues of currency, lack of currency convertibility. We would have to do what they call a net settlement arrangement where you use the dollar as an intermediary. Secondly is the cost of sending $200, or let me make it $100 across the continent of Africa vis-a-vis other markets is very expensive. We're sitting at anything from 8% to 24% for sending $100. So what we've seen is certain regional arrangements beginning to look at what they call a multilateral settlement model, where you can collate all the transactions to try and reduce the number of times you need to interface with the US dollar for cross-border. So these are some of the things that we see that will bring down the cost and hopefully make it more affordable for micro and small medium enterprises who are doing cross-border trade to use digital systems.
Doctor, I really want to understand, the central bank is hosting the launch. What significance do you see being held in the broader narrative of regional fintech collaboration?
And this is great. And I think why and of course, Eswatini already is an exemplar. You mentioned the launch of a very innovative interoperable solution within the great kingdom of Eswatini. Once you build these payment systems, you build what I call the fundamental building blocks for driving inclusivity. There's a new sort of term that was coined probably a couple of years ago called digital public infrastructure. That is baselined on payment systems. So once you have that layer, then you allow, through regulation, for central banks to allow fintechs to directly integrate into these systems so that they can actually get access to consumer data, so that they can now begin to build solutions that are bespoke. So this is how it's important to see central banks taking a leadership role in building what are fundamental building blocks that will spur the fintech revolution in of course, the kingdom of Eswatini, but also across the other borders of this continent.
Yeah, one thing we cannot doubt for a fact is that there's an evident rise of fintechs and mobile money platforms. Do you see a collaboration or competition driving the next phase of Africa's payment revolution?
So I come from a very strong view where my appetite for innovation on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 9.5 and sometimes 10. But how do you enable that? You enable that through competition, but then the word innovation must be innovation, because there's times where people think that they're innovating, but they're imitating. So if you're going to solve something that was solved 4 years ago, and you want to take, instead of asking to learn from what was solved 4 years ago, then that's what I call imitation. So before you believe that you're innovating, ensure that you've understood the baseline and done benchmark studies, so you can try and crash the learning curve and then begin to really move on to that inflection point where innovation happens. So really, you can talk about competition, but if you're competing and somebody was solving mobile money transfers 10 years ago, but you're competing in a market and you're beginning from scratch instead of going to learn, then you're doing the wrong thing. So for me, competition is important, but you also need to baseline and see how to collaborate. So the two go hand in hand together.
Yeah, we just wrapped up Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I want to ask you, what role do trust, data security, as well as consumer protection play in building sustainable instant payments, ecosystems across the continent?
That is actually probably at the top of the consumer list, and trust dividend as well. So without proper cybersecurity, without proper real-time fraud monitoring, without the issue I mentioned of financial literacy and digital literacy, you will always have a limit in amount of people who will jump onto the financial inclusion bracket through digitization. So this sits right at the top of the agenda, like it does with policy, environment, and indeed enabling technology. So that is almost like the top one or two issues that must be addressed when building inclusive instant payment systems.
Yeah, 4 years in to the incredible work that you are doing. Looking ahead now, how do you envision the next decade of digital payments, and what does true financial inclusion look like by, let's say, 2035?
Thank you very much. So if we do the work that and achieve it, of course, by crowding in the critical stakeholders, the regulators, the fintechs, the MNOs, the banks, and of course, this emerging element, I see everybody talks about AI. I see that as a strategic tailwind that will drive. And what does that mean? We are coining something called payments for what? Payments for agriculture, so that tomorrow a farmer on his farm will be able to pick up through his phone and link to a satellite image through an AI engine that a crop has a certain disease. That AI engine, through a payment system, will tell him that, listen, you have this disease, and here's the pesticide that you need to order, and here's where you can order that pesticide from. So agentic AI coming in, healthcare becoming much more focused, especially around medical insurance for our citizens. So I see the payment infrastructure that we're building today providing that backbone for this true digital transformation to take place. And what I've given you are one or two examples of areas we are already collaborating to achieve. So 2035, not that I have a crystal ball, but those are some of the things you'll see coming into play.
Of course, perhaps as a parting shot, I want to read this for you. There's a lot of growing discussion and a lot of appetite with regards to linking digital payments to digital identity systems. How critical is this alignment to driving inclusive growth and building trust in Africa's digital financial future?
Wonderful, wonderful question. And that forms part of that digital public infrastructure block that I spoke about. So indeed, the traditional DPI stack is digital ID with the digital payment on top, and then with an exchange mechanism for consent of data. So those are critical building blocks that would be fundamental for the digital transformation to happen. So this is how critical, what you mentioned around digital ID linked with payments is. It is a fundamental building block for the work that we're doing across the continent.
Dr. Robert Ochola, thank you so much. He's the Chief Executive of African Nenda, just speaking on some of the things that we expect to happen at the launch of the State Inclusive Instant Payment Systems report launch that is happening this coming Thursday, which is tomorrow, at the Central Bank of Eswatini in Eswatini. Let's go for a quick ad break. We shall be back shortly.
Welcome back. You are still watching Nedbank Business Watch. On the program today, with Nedbank, we are discussing fraud awareness. And to break it down for us, I'm joined by Smiso Kwebu, who is the Enterprise Risk Manager at Nedbank. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Kwebu. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks, Natsila. How are you?
I'm great. So we'll get to it. Fraud, it's often a common term or headlining term. We hear people or read of, incidences whereby people have been arrested for fraud of this much amount of money. Can you perhaps just give us a definition? What is fraud and why is it really so important for clients or just the general person to understand this?
In simple language, Natsila, I will say fraud comprises of three elements. There has to be an intention, and there has to be a wrongful act or criminal act, and then there has to be a financial gain or a financial loss in one party. So if combined, we will just say fraud is a wrongful or a criminal act that will result in a financial gain from one party and a financial loss from the other party. That is as simple as you can explain it. So from a layman perspective, when we look into fraud, we define it in three aspects, where there is pressure, there is rationale, and also there is what we call an opportunity. That is what the fraudsters do. So when we look at opportunity, we are saying a fraudster in a system, let's take for instance in a banking system, he will look at opportunities as to how he can defeat or how he can break through the systems or the processes that have been put in place to deter fraudsters. So he saw an opportunity, perhaps it's weaknesses in controls, and he takes up an opportunity towards that, or there is an incentive that drives the fraudster to say, I am incentivized to act in this way because I want to prove, especially for cyber criminals, I want to prove that they can hack through a system. So they want to prove they've got that incentive that drives them. Or someone could be under a certain pressure that he is facing, whether be it at home, be it at work. If that person feels like there is a certain pressure that he needs to address, then he will find the opportunity to commit fraud. Usually these things are based in a person's lifestyle or choices or spending patterns, or the person is heavily under debt. So they find that's the things that's the motives that drives them to look into opportunities to incentivize themselves or to find pressure in that.
Right. You've just touched on the fraud triangle. So the month of October was actually the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, where also as a broadcaster we decided that, or came to the conclusion that actually the conversations need to go beyond the month of October, which is actually why I'm glad we're here today. Perhaps you can talk to us about why fraud awareness is such a priority for specifically Nedbank.
Fraud is not just a priority for Nedbank North-Zealand. Actually, the month of November, it's International Fraud Awareness Month. Okay. So as we are going to the next week, from the 16th to the 22nd of November, it's what we call the International Fraud Awareness Week. So every country, every organization should be out there educating their stakeholders, raising awareness around fraud, raising awareness how can an individual or an entity safeguard its assets against fraudsters.
Now, let's talk about, the common types of fraud that as a bank you often see. Are these, regional, or are they international? Are they local? What goes on there?
With technology, everything is advancing each and every day. Common trends that we have noticed, it's social engineering. In our context as a country, looking at the Fakata scams, they use a social engineering technique which is called phishing, that is voice technology, where they will call you either pretend that you have received money or pretend to be the common one that you are supposed to receive money from the DPM's office, or there's a job opportunity, you need to put in money so that you can secure that job opportunity. So that is the most common one that of late we have seen a rise in the country, the Fakata scams, and fortunately we're working with law enforcement agencies. We have seen a sort of a decline, but we cannot actually rule a rise again, because like I said, these criminals are advancing in terms of technology. You release an app today, they master how it works, they find an opportunity how they can manipulate it or manipulate their victims in them giving them money. We have also seen account takeover scams actually happening, whereby people will use fraudulent identities in taking over an account of someone, pretending to be someone else whom they are not. And we have seen that. And also fraudulent proof of payments. In the last quarter, towards the end of the year, we have seen a rise in fraudulent proof of payments, whereby you go to a shop, you want to acquire certain services or goods. They render you that service. You provide them with a fake proof of payment so that they can give you the goods or provide you with that service that you were looking for. We have seen a rise in bank statement frauds, whereby people, they manipulate bank statements to apply for credit facilities or whatever facility they want to apply for from other entities. They will take a Nedbank statement, go to another institution to prove that they have got funds so that they can secure a loan, or they go to their suppliers to say, open an account for me on credit. I have got backing from my bank that I do have funds in my account. We have also seen invoice fraud, whereby they will produce a fraudulent invoice in order for you to pay up a certain amount if you wanted a certain service. They invoice you. In the invoice, you find that they did not use that entity's bank accounts. They're using their own accounts. When you pay, you will assume that you are paying to that entity that had invoiced you, but when in actual fact, the fraudsters have used their own banking details there, and the money gets diverted in that way. Also, investment scams. We have seen of late that they target especially pensioners, where they know that this person is going to receive a huge sum of money at a certain period in time. Then they lure him into investing into that investment scam, and you find that person being enticed by the return that he or she will get. Then he will be paying that amount, only to find that the investment was never there. So looking into these trends, I would not say it's local. It's all over. Regional, international. We have seen that even in other countries. Fortunately, in Swaziland, if you look at our economy, it then worries. But in other countries, when you look, the global fraud report that was released last year, 2024, where they were talking about over 33 billion in dollars that was lost through fraud, if we combine those regional and national numbers. So it's a concern.
Right.
Yeah.
So a majority of people are, one way or the other, seeking some form of economic upliftment. Right, and so when fraudsters see opportunity here, individuals can be quite unsuspecting. So what are some of the red flags that, clients should watch out for to avoid perhaps falling victim to fraud?
One of the things that the fraudsters, they use is creating a certain pressure on you to act on their instruction. It's like their instruction is time-barred. You need to act fast because they do not want you to have that leeway to come back to your senses and think about what action you are going to take. So they sort of pressure you to act fast. And because if you look at the unemployment rate in the country, and you look at the daily living expense that most of our population is living under poverty. So if you get an opportunity to say you can make quick money here, you will actually take it. And at that moment in time, that is what the fraudsters, they will use, that pressure or that vulnerability you are at that moment, and they use that. Because I will make an example, Notsile, when the Fakata scams, what they do, they will come to you and say, we have erroneously sent 5,000 Malangen to your account. At that moment, and they will tell you that you do not need to send back the whole 5,000. You can send back 4,500 and keep the 500 as a gesture of goodwill. So in that way, you will be, in a way, be appreciative that the other person is considerate of your needs. At that moment, they take advantage of your vulnerability. So what will happen next? You will find that you didn't even receive those funds. Then they'll start asking you, do you have money in your Momo account? Do you have money in your Mobi wallet? And the moment you say yes, they will say, okay, please send whatever you have at the moment whilst you sort with your bank that you send back the remaining balance. By the time you realize that the SMS that he had sent to you was actually a fake SMS, money will be out of your account. In that way, chances of recovery, they become slim. But with advancement in technology, we are now in a way to say if you are able to report within a certain time period, they are high chances of you recovering that money. But what we have noticed, Notil, is that most customers, once they are scammed, they shy away from reporting because they fear being embarrassed that they fell victim of this. So by the time the person goes to report to the police, you find that it is already too late. The chances of recovery by the time are very, very slim because of the period the person took to report, because he feared being embarrassed that he or she fell victim of the scammers.
Right. Before we get to how people can report, what are some of the measures that are in place by the bank or that can actually, be taken upon by individuals to reduce opportunity for internal or perhaps external fraud? Cases such as your KYC, how effective are these in ensuring that we prevent fraud?
I think for us as a bank, Notsila, one of the things that what we have touched on, the issue of KYC, which is know your customers, that we frequently expect customers to update frequently as per their profiling within the bank. So that helps us to understand the customer, because when we do the analysis, we will understand your spending patterns, we will understand how you receive money, so that whenever, if there are any things that we pick when we are monitoring that are out of the ordinary, then we engage you to say, we are picking up these trends on your account, but this is not what you had registered for when you opened the account. And also we do have our secured banking channels, both on online banking, and our app is secure. There is limited or absolutely no chance for anyone to hack into your bank account unless you yourself as a customer, you have compromised yourself.
Right.
Because that is where we see the trends coming from customers compromising themselves. Then when they come to report, they will say someone hacked into my banking account, whereas they had compromised themselves. Also, we do have a dedicated and committed team that supports customers from transactional banking up to the stage whereby if you have fallen victim of a fraud, then you can be able to use the internal team to report, and we do investigate. And also we do have our reporting channels whereby if you have been scammed, you can report. Also, utilization of our law enforcement agencies to report such cases, because we work closely with them.
Right. As we conclude, what's word of advice that you can perhaps give to clients to avoid scams such as fraudulent proof of payment, fraud, invoice fraud, or actually investment scams, as you touched on earlier?
I think for me, the key of it all, Notsile, it's vigilance.
Yes.
We need to exercise vigilance. We need not to be taken by surprise. If a scammer will call you to say we have received 5,000, just politely say to the person, let me confirm through my bank. The moment you say you want to confirm through the bank, the moment, because they have got their own script they work on. The moment you say I want to confirm with my bank, it's not part of their script. At that moment, then they will just drop the call on you. You are safe. And the other way we say for customers, if you receive the call, don't rush to take any action. Take your moment, take your time to reflect on what is being said. Think about it if it's actually the truth or not. Through what you need to verify first the message. Is the message authentic? If you do not have verification tools, engage your bank. Engage your banker to say, I have received an SMS purporting that I have received 5,000 Malangan. Please confirm in my account if indeed I have received so much funds. Proof of payments, we say if you receive a proof of payment as an entity, before you release the goods or before you provide the service, get your bank to confirm that indeed the proof of payment is authentic. If you receive a statement, use your banker to confirm if the statement is authentic, because you don't want to fall victim. All said, not silly. One thing is real. Scammers are out there and they're out there to make money. What does it cause for a Maswati? A Maswati needs to be vigilant in these times.
Right. Good. Thank you very much for that very informative discussion we just had. In the days of modern banking, be vigilant. That was Simiso Kwebu, who is the Enterprise Risk Manager at Nedbank. We were discussing fraud awareness this afternoon. Stick around. The show continues right after this. Welcome back. We've come now to the final segment of the show, that is our market analysis segment, and I'm joined by Bongani Mabuza, who is the head of treasury at Nedbank, to help us make sense of all that's going on in today's trading day, which is actually the third trading day of the week. A very good afternoon to you. How are you doing? It's been a while.
It has, Natsila. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. It's a real pleasure to be back here again.
Glad to have you back. So what is your sentiment over the now anticipated end of the U.S. government shutdown?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good place to start. It's very topical. I think we've seen the longest government shutdown in the U.S. in history. It's a 43-day shutdown, so that the U.S. government has been closed for that long. There's a lot of implications. I think from a market's perspective, this meant that economic data was not going out into the market. So between today and tomorrow, we expect a flood of economic data to come out, including jobless numbers in the U.S., which shed light on the economic environment, especially from an employment perspective in the U.S., inflation numbers and so on. All of that is expected to come out between today and tomorrow. So we do expect quite a bit of market volatility as a result. I think this morning, markets have been largely quiet. Global markets have been largely quiet in anticipation of the opening of the U.S. markets. So we do expect quite a bit of activity as a result of that. I mean, and closer to home, I think the medium-term budget policy statement delivered by the finance minister in South Africa is also expected to drive market activity,
Right.
Depending on how that goes. We have seen some news come out of that policy statement, and the market is receiving it positively. I think the rand is strengthening and getting closer and closer to breaking that 17 mark.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the rand, how is it actually performing against some of the world's strongest currencies? I understand against the dollar, we're doing quite well.
Yeah, no, thanks. And that that trend continues across all the major currencies. I'm not seeing. I mean, against the dollar, we're at 17.14, which is further strengthening. Against the euro, we're at 19.8269, and against the British pound, we're at 22.46. And I mean, just taking a step back, a month or two ago, against the dollar, we're around 1760, 1770. Against the euro, we were at over 20. We're around 20.2. Against the pound, we're at 23. So the rand has strengthened quite a bit. I mean, when you see these moves on a day-to-day basis, it's easy to lose track of the context of where we're actually coming from. So the rand has strengthened quite a bit, and it's quite good from a general economic perspective. If you're an overall importer of goods, I mean, the effect of that in our economy is that we saw just last week, as a result of the rand strengthening and as a result of lower crude oil prices, a reduction in fuel prices at petrol stations. So that has an impact on normal people like you and me.
Right. I'd like for you to give us your analysis of equities. Just some hours ago, we learned that SoftBank, sold its entire stake in NVIDIA. NVIDIA actually, amid concerns that AI-related stocks are suddenly overvalued. Could we be seeing early signs of a tech correction there? What's happening?
Yeah, no, that is very interesting, and I think that we did see that happening yesterday, and we did see, as a result of that, the price of NVIDIA go down by just shy of 3% in the US. It dragged the entire IT sector down. But overall, the S&P 500 was up about 1/5 of a percentage point, which is good. The FTSE 100 was down just about 10 basis points, and the JSE All-Share Index up about 2/3 of a percent. But coming back to your question, what is happening with what SoftBank is doing is they are saying they're taking a big bet on AI. So they are selling off NVIDIA and focusing more on AI stocks. So as a result, you saw a big jump in their quarterly profits, I think to about $16.6 billion that they released. And this was largely due to gains that they realized from their investment in OpenAI. And they are doubling down on that and other AI-related investments that they're doing.
All right. When we move on to our commodities, how's gold actually performing of late?
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, the story from a commodities perspective is usually a result of volatility or volatility expectations. From a gold perspective, we saw 3 days of gains in the gold price. Gold is a bit steady today, just really flat compared to where it was yesterday. And traders are awaiting data after the U.S. government opening. I think, as we said, between today and tomorrow, we're expecting a flood of data from a U.S. perspective, and we expect, depending on how that goes, a bit of volatility in the market. From a crude oil perspective, it's down just about 1% from where we were yesterday. And again, we did see 3 days of gains in the crude oil price. And the big news there is really that there will be reports that are expected to shed light on crude oil expectations or the crude oil market in 2026. So depending on where markets are expecting demand and supply to be in 2026, you might see that price continue to move.
Right. What would be your outlook though for 2026?
Yeah, it's difficult to say from a single commodity perspective. I think, especially in the geopolitical landscape that we find ourselves in, and a lot of the uncertainty that we see. But what has been encouraging is the continued downward trend of the crude oil price that we've seen in the last couple of months, and that That is encouraging in terms of from a consumer perspective because it means it puts more money back into the pockets of consumers.
Right, fair enough. Mabuza, thank you so much for your analysis. That was Bongan Mabuza, Head of Treasury at Nedbank, helping us make sense of today's trading day. Otherwise, we'll take a break. My colleague and I will be back shortly to wrap up the show.
Digital helps you make cross-border payments. Human gives you global specialists. Digital allows you to apply for a loan anytime, anywhere. Human connects you to credit experts. Digital puts you in control of your money, while Human connects you to wealth advisors. Digital allows you to freeze, unfreeze, cancel, and reorder your card. Human gives you that personal touch. Digital when you want it. Human when you need it. Get the complete private banking experience with Nedbank Private Clients.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Right, 4 minutes before 3 o'clock. This has been the weekly broadcast of Nedbank Business Watch. We really do hope that you enjoyed today's edition. I did, especially my conversation with Gwebu there on fraud awareness, actually.
Yeah, quite an important conversation now, considering we just kept off Cyber Security Awareness Month, and the conversation around fraud, and this is something that we've been saying for a very long time, is not an October conversation or a September conversation or whatever. It's an everyday conversation because, like we always say, people, the fraudsters, they are always finding new and innovative ways to perform their fraudulent behaviors, and so it's important to know how to insulate yourself and how you can be safe. So quite an important and critical conversation, and I learned a lot from it. But also we did speak to Dr. Robert Ochola on a conversation that speaks to inclusive payment systems that they are looking to launch tomorrow at the Central Bank of Eswatini, and he does speak on the mere fact that as we roll out the African Continental Free Trade Area, we need payment systems that will be inclusive and ones that are digital to allow for seamless trade, as well as to fully take advantage of this large market and the GDP estimated at $3 trillion, I believe. It's a lot of money, so Eswatini fits perfectly in that picture.
I look forward to the launch tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what the data has to say. I mean, he did point out a picture that by the year 2035, if I recall, inclusive payment actually should be seamless, 100%. Actually by that year specifically. Now, when we talk about, payments as fee, so it's kind of, we're digital now, right? So I would like for you to perhaps give me a picture here. What is it that you do to ensure that, as fast paying as you do, when you conduct your transactions, what are you actually doing to protect yourself online?
To protect myself, first and foremost, I'm authenticated, two-factor authentication. I try to change my password every 2 months, which is not recommended. It should be more frequent than that, but my passwords are always very hard to predict. And, Nedbank has taught us that every time that they've come here. So I think, just taking heed of two-factor authentication, not using free Wi-Fis, and making sure that my passwords are always changed every now and then, and that they are not easy to predict. I think those are some of the things that I've learned from Nedbank.
And they also talked about the KYC, which is actually very important that you update your KYC. Otherwise, this has been Nedbank Business Rush. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care.
Make better money choices. Choose a bank that takes your money seriously. Business Watch was brought to you by Nedbank.